All right, this is going to be fun. We have Victor Diaz from Renegade Running. And if you're not familiar with Renegade, you're not really following along what's happening in running, especially in run culture. And Victor's going to give us the down low on everything that's going on. Victor, what's up?
Good morning. Thanks for having me, Thomas. I'm excited to be here.
I know, we kind of know each other. We've spent time. We've shook hands and been in each other's faces. So it's not like this is the first time getting to know each other.
We had dinner together, and
Yeah, we did.
yeah,
Lots of wine that night.
yeah.
I don't even recall. Did you drink? Did you have any of that wine?
I did not. But we were at a really nice hotel up in the Berkeley Hills,
The Claremont.
the Claremont.
Yeah, which we were there. We came out. So Robbie and I went out with Norda to do an event. They were doing a release on their 002, which is kind of a lower stack, closer to the ground. Victor was nice enough to host everybody at Renegade. And so I had known about you before. We kind of connected every once in a while online before that, but that was the first time we got to hang.
Correct. And you're from the area, so we were able to connect on that. Talk about the life of the East Bay, as you know, when we were both younger, and then kind of how it is now today.
Yeah, and I certainly want to get into like run culture and the Renegade store and what you're doing there, but I think you have a bigger mission that I kind of want you to kind of share. Like, you're not just here to have a retail store and to sling shoes or to sling gear. What's your like whole philosophy behind what you're trying to do out there?
Well, I was really excited in the right around say 2015, 2016, watching the early emergence of run crews, mostly in Europe at the time, probably Run Them Crew and Pata Run Club, and seeing folks from a lot of different backgrounds coalescing together, sometimes around a mission, sometimes around just the joy of being in community, and then, of course, more often than not, around the joy of running. And then to see that spread like wildfire into the U.S., Black Roses in New York, and then, of course, the energy of Koreatown and Good Vibes in L.A., that just got me really excited that there was something different happening in the run space, unlike anything that I had seen or experienced as a runner growing up in the late 80s and early 90s coming into the sport. So I wanted to be a part of it, and I wasn't quite sure where or how initially. I was working in public education for a long time, and I saw as I continued to hover around the run space, I felt like there was a gap between this emerging excitement and community building and coalescing around runners from all backgrounds and spaces for them to come and shop, hang out, share information, talk about running and racing, and talk about issues that were impacting our community. And I didn't feel like that was happening anywhere in the country. And so I thought, hey, I think I'm perfectly positioned to do this. And that's really the groundwork or the roots of what sparked the opening of Renegade.
So like a shift in culture, I would say before that time period, I really feel like your retail experience was pretty cookie cutter. You'd see a rack of Brooks clothing, you'd see a rack of Nike, maybe, some Saucony. It was the shoe companies kind of like putting, here's your run gear. And if it wasn't a lot of it was more performance based than maybe style based. So it's like, okay, this shirt wicks sweat. Who needs to do anything crazy? Put it out in a couple different fluorescent colors, maybe, and a black, and that's where you go. What I found interesting about run crews, and we started Faster Bastards back in 2012, was that this became a way to express yourself in running and kind of identify with like-minded people or other people. I think what I see in your mission is also kind of helping that underserved clientele, maybe marginalized clientele, and bringing them into the spotlight, or at least giving them a place to feel where they belong in the sport and are part of the sport. How important is that to you?
Yeah, 100%. That's, I would also say that, the beauty of run crews, because nearly all of them do not have a physical location, Pata being the probably one exception since they're also a retail store. Um, they'll get together wherever, and usually, around, like-minded interest in their community, be it a community meetup spot, a restaurant, a bar, places like that. So they really have this, like, go get it attitude about them. The difference, and where I felt like I could make where Renegade could make a difference, is that run stores kind of have the opposite ethos. It's like, we hold all the expertise, we help hold all the information. If you are serious about running, you'll come into our doors. And that's just, I think, of a real, that's kind of like the chasm between the two, the tension between the two communities. So I opened up with, and I'm driven by, what can we do to reach individuals, small run clubs, larger running crews, in a way that feels real, authentic, and we can connect around something bigger than running. And that's really where the work is at.
Yeah. And that's interesting you say that. I've seen kind of like a full circle with run crews. And I think originally I get what you're saying. Like, I didn't start running in high school and then go to college and then, grow up in the ecosphere of run specialty. And I think the running stores that are getting it right, and then we're seeing some of these emerge that are kind of exciting and have that energy you want to be around. But there was a time period where I think these run clubs spun out of, like, I don't want to be owned by a running store, or like find my running group at a running store. So they split off and they kind of create their own culture and kind of grow this organic group of people that like to run together. It doesn't even have to be around structured, workouts or anything. It can just be like, hey, this is where we meet. We all run this, and it's social. We have some beers afterwards or whatever. And then it's kind of evolved into this thing where it became real appealing for brands now to kind of like skip the store and go straight to the run club.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's backlash from the traditional stores that are like, hey, why aren't you supporting us anymore? We buy all your shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so I'm seeing these run clubs actually get almost like sponsored and pulled back into the store. I'm wondering if that is going to kill the culture, or do you think that grows the culture in certain circumstances? And I'll give you, before I let you answer that, I'll give you my thought is, there's some stores that do it right. I think the Loop, the Exchange, Renegade, Runner Space. There's some stores that are embracing what the run clubs are doing, but there's other ones that are just plugging in as a marketing tactic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like, running stores and running brands, for that matter, the big shoe brands, I feel like we're approaching a place now where, like, you got to earn the respect of the community. You got to earn the respect of some of these run club founders, run crew founders. And if you don't, yeah, they're not gonna support your business, which I think is a great approach. Like, you know, communities of color largely are ignored by the running industry. They're used primarily to, like, color up their social media. It's like, if we want to add some flavor to it, you'll put someone in your social media. Sadly and unfortunately, it seems to be like the same person for, showing up in like 4 or 5 different shoe brands social media for like 18 months or something. It's like, I don't know if, like, they all have conspired to some cookie cutter formula. So I think that the growth, and the political nature of it also, because I don't want to lose that it's a political act when a group of people, and when it's a largely communities of color, groups of people in the large numbers that they're coming together. That's a pretty profound political statement. So I think more shoe brands are no longer walking that fine line. They're actually jumping all in with both feet, or they're going to miss the opportunity. Because, like I said at the top of this question, like, you really have to come and earn it. You got to be real. You have to be willing to just do more than just throw, a handful of shoes, or a branded singlet at a crew now. And I think that's the way it should be.
All right, so you threw out kind of a word that I think is kind of like a tricky word, especially in today's climate, political. What do you mean by political when you use it in that context?
Well, when you see, I mean, I think when you see it, when you see a group of people of color coming together, um, really, like, let's say, aside from a topic or a function, that can be, that from the outside can be intimidating to somebody who is not a part of that group. um, and the sort of historic nature of that thinking is like, that group is conspiring to do something, fill in the blank, mischievous, political, social upheaval or something like that. So the appearance of it conjures up, or evokes a lot of different feelings. I call it a political act because, in many ways, our communities, let's call it the BIPOC community just for the sake of more specificity, um, though it represents a lot of different groups of communities of color, right? African American, Asian, Latino. um, when we come together, there's just this feeling like we can do anything together. And so that's, it's an exciting moment, but I can see where it would be scary to some people. um, and it's the first time this has happened in running, and the numbers that it's happening in.
I mean, that's the exciting thing is that, when you think about like from our perspective, the more people running, the more people need information, the more people that will search out that information, whether it's through us or through somebody else. But the numbers grow, the races grow, the healthy ecosystem of running grows. So yeah, I mean, growing up in the East Bay and stuff like that, at least where I grew up, I was exposed to BIPOC communities my entire childhood. Like you're not going to grow up in at least when I was there, it was very diverse as far as the community. And then, you come over to New York, same thing. And even in Baltimore, where it's a pretty integrated city. There was a time where it felt a little less integrated, but now when we go for runs and we do stuff, you're going to see, people of every background at these runs.
Mhm.
So to me, it's not as crazy, but I came into running later than like I wasn't running until 2000 and like seven. And so I kind of saw a shift, but it's definitely gotten more inclusive in the last 5-10 years. But I think the running community has also grown in the last 5-10 years. For
Mhm.
you, when you see it, I see it from a different perspective because obviously being a white guy and coming into it, I'm like, I've seen the community here. It's been happening. But from your perspective, do you feel like this is a new thing, or am I like downplaying a little bit how much it's growing?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I'm quite a bit older, and like I said, I started running in the late '80s, and early '90s more competitively. Um, Everywhere that I've run, there've always been people of color that have run. I think that the difference between then and now is that we mostly ran in our communities. Mostly, if we did race, it was within our communities and didn't travel very far. I think that the difference, and what makes it more visible and, in my opinion, more beautiful, is that we're actually leaving the community and going and racing outside of our neighborhoods. Many people have the audacity, it seems to go and race major marathons around the world, which is really exciting. And then many we're now seeing, they're actually dabbling in multiple sports, not just running. You see them now taking on um, cycling, gravel riding, triathlon, and things like that. So it does give license when you start to see larger groups of people of color. It gives a license for more groups to emerge as more of us travel to other races. Again, it gives license and connectivity, safety, fun, excitement to travel to those places. I know a lot of people, for example, Chicago is kind of getting that energy where a lot of people love to go to Chicago and New York, because of the diversity of people that are racing, communities that they can stay in and race and run and train at. Um, and of course, that's with the context of what's been happening at Boston as well, right? Which is kind of seems to be going in the other direction. So, so these are narratives that people are like diving more deeply into, and it's changing. It's changing the sport. It's changing who participates. And yeah, that I'm enjoying seeing that for sure.
So, as a store owner and seeing it like firsthand, who's coming into the store, who's engaging with product and stuff like that, what are some things that you're seeing that would maybe be different than you might see at a Mill City run or Run Austin or some of the other parts of the country?
Well, we spend a lot of time in the community, and we do a lot of events in the community that some running related, that we don't charge for. So maybe, and we're really visible. So the only thing that's required of the community is for them to come out, like our track nights, for example, on Wednesday nights. It's at the local community college. We'll always have upwards of 100, 120, 130 people. Um, and it's exciting to see that they coalesce themselves outside of that Wednesday night. So they'll run in groups of 5 or 6 or 7 on other days and things like that. They're joining races together. So, and then of course they'll come and shop at the store in pairs and small groups and things like that. So there is this sort of like inextricable bond that I feel like we have with our community. We're at a place now where, I don't know, 2/3 of the people that come into the shop, we already know them. We've seen them out in the community. They've come to our events. They're a multiple repeat customer. So there is that familiarity. I wouldn't go as far as saying it's like a barbershop because we haven't reached that level of coolness yet, but it is a place where people come and you're known, you're recognized, you're acknowledged, and you're celebrated, and we have that sort of connection. And then just, I mean, on a like much more specific note, we did an event on Saturday here at the shop with Nike sportswear, so the sportswear side, the lifestyle side, and through our partnership with Nike and through the event, close to 400 pairs of shoes were gifted to people in the community in a really cool sort of Nike style with like suitcases, and we had DJs and food and a run, and there was a dance party at night. So it was essentially a celebration of, yeah, celebration of Nike product, a celebration of our community, some product, and the energy was high. The turnout was crazy. So it's those kinds of events coupled with our like every day or every week sort of run from the shop activity and everything in between. So
See,
I don't know what the sort of culture or ethos is like at a Mill City. They have of course a long-standing relationship with their community and do an amazing job of community building themselves. Um, yeah, I would say that we just do it sort of like Oakland with a little bit
yeah,
more style,
that's what I was getting to, the Oakland thing, and I'll get back to that in a second. But it's funny you said barbershop because I'm always talking about like for our space here in Baltimore, and we're not a retail store or anything like that. But my favorite place as a kid was always the record store or the skate shop, and you went there even if you weren't purchasing. I would go to the skate shop and they would put in like tapes, at this time VHS tapes of Caballero and people skating, and you could just sit there and maybe the owner would order pizza and we would just hang out. And I've always wanted to have that vibe in the things that we do for Believe in the Run. And one of the things I'm noticing is kind of like a parallel between us is giving to people is more fun than taking from people. And we've always wanted, when we do events, they're free events. We want to bring people in and create that party atmosphere that makes them love the sport that we're in and maybe introduces them to other people that feel the same way. And one of my favorite things is seeing kind of like, we have the Believe Run Club, we have Faster Bastards, and I've watched kind of the social groups grow out of that where they're now creating their own social circles outside of the run club. But we've had marriages, babies, all that stuff. It's just a fun like way to live, is like to help spread the passion for a healthy thing like running. One of the things that I noticed in Oakland was that, man, that's a tough place to be doing business. We went to the Target there while we were visiting you. There's a dude with like a semi-automatic, you know, rifle standing at the guard. I know that you've had people like smash windows before and stuff like that. How it seems like you're committed to the community, but man, it's got to be rough sometimes.
Um, well, it's rough to operate a business. Just in general, it's tough to operate a business in a city that has many other issues, of which crime is one of them for sure. But Oakland has much bigger problems and issues. I think more systemic than crime. I would say it's more a lack of leadership at the like city council and mayor level, um, which I think is just kind of generally a problem with politics in general. But definitely a city of this size needs stronger leadership, and I think without that, that's what many of the small business. That's what we talk about when small business owners get together. Is it there isn't the kind of accessibility we would want with our political leaders, and there doesn't seem to be an urgency or a plan in place. And when you don't have those things, then one of the byproducts is crime, unfortunately, or it's the crime that happens sticks out. Like, is this thing just going to keep getting worse because of the things I just mentioned?
Yeah.
And so
It's the
that's the
same
big.
here in Baltimore.
What's that?
Baltimore has a similar issue. And
Yeah, and
maybe
we're
it's
seeing that across a lot of cities. There's for whatever reason there just seems to be a lack of leadership around some of the cities that unfortunately a number of people of color are living in. But just with regard to Oakland, I think that's the bigger issue. Um, yeah, but you said something about I want to go back to though about the skate shop. You know, I I've been getting questions now about like how I got good at building community. It seems to be like a like a like it's kind of almost voodoo or something, in the sport of
yeah,
running. Because people within the sport of running have asked me, like, what's the formula? Like, if we have some you know, master
like a
plan that,
plan,
yeah.
like a PowerPoint.
But as you were saying that, like about barbershops and skate shops, I mean, I grew up in a barbershop in San Jose with my father as a barber. And I just feel like early on, I grew up in a neighborhood and at a time where people looked out for each other. Um, every adult had a right to parent you. If you had food or whatever you had in the neighborhood, it was shared with other people who needed it. So there were people constantly coming through, my grandparents, to eat or grab food or maybe even sleep and stuff like that. So I guess in some way I can say that I've sort of been preparing for this moment like my entire life, but it does bring a bigger question to the floor for the sport of running that I feel like still operates very transactional, I mean, even like your store runs, it's, I think most running shops that do runs from their shop, you can feel in most cases that infrastructure was really set up to like bring demo shoes and to sell you something inside the store, maybe sell you a training plan and things like that, so yeah, unless you've been to a skate shop when you were younger and like you needed like a set of wheels so you can get home, like the shop owner gave you a set of wheels to get home,
Yeah.
um, and so I think that's a bigger question that I wish that the running industry would have with itself, or maybe at places like TRE, like how can we be more efficacious in our communities? How can we have a greater impact? I mean, we're really just running. You know what I mean? It's not like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's like we're in movement, and we're in movement in spaces that in many of our stores, if you go out 2 or 3 or 4 more miles, there's a great need for the infrastructure of what we do, right? Like we mobilize. There are people that are talented across a lot of different industries, um, there's people with a great deal of like fortitude. I mean, to run a marathon or an ultra takes, or a 5K for that matter, takes a lot of fortitude. So what if we like bottled up all of that secret sauce and did things just a few more blocks outside of our shops? Like how then do we start to transform the neighborhoods we live in, and not
Yeah.
depend on political leaders or the person at Target to make our spaces safer?
Yeah. Well, I think, we talk about like the building community thing. I think that people can sniff out inauthentic motives. And, if it doesn't feel right, it doesn't feel right. And you're not going to get the vibe that you're looking for. So when people talk about a playbook or how do you do this, I don't think it's a how. It's like, why are you doing this?
Hmm.
And I think the problem is when somebody comes to you and says, hey, can I get a playbook for how to build that community?
Yeah.
You're like, you don't need a playbook. You just need a reason why. Why? Like, do you want it? Because look, maybe you will get rich owning a running store, and I'm sure there are people that have. But for the most of us, like if you're going to own a skate shop, a barber shop, whatever it is, you're not looking to, you know, bank. Like it's not like a investor comes in and says, "What's your investor deal? Let's
Hmm.
build this up and blow this out." You know, so I think a lot of people that when it resonates, it's because the motive behind the shop. Like, why do you have a shop, Victor?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to see a difference in our community on a lot of different levels. I wanted there to be a safe space for people to come together. I wanted us to be able, as a larger group of people, to have an impact in our community. Um, and those were two big reasons why. Um, um, yeah, and it's the joy of us in being in movement together to address our issues in our community together. There's really nothing like it. I mean, we mobilized for a nonprofit in our community. The nonprofit has nothing to do with running, and on two different fundraising events, the entire community, not just Renegade or not because of Renegade, it was all of us together, raised like over 30,000 for a nonprofit that's run entirely by volunteers and is working with day laborers in the Oakland area. Um, so, so that to me is the why. That's the joy of what we're doing.
So like a vehicle to get you to another space.
To be better, man. To be better in community. To live in a better space, like you were saying. I mean, I live and work in this area. We run and hang out and eat in the neighborhood. I walk around this neighborhood with my kids, and you just want to feel better in that space and feel more connected to each other. You know, and that's a big part of the why.
I mean, if I look at Oakland now from when I was a kid, and so my mom lived in Oakland for a short period of time, right near your store, and Oakland in the time when she was there, the late '70s, early '80s, like it was a disaster as far as like I remember it as a child. Like you didn't go to Oakland, you went to Berkeley, you went other areas, but Oakland was kind of like you don't go there. Now Oakland Hills is a different story, but when I went there, it's actually kind of crazy because now I saw it visiting you. It was like okay, it took an upswing, and then it looks like California in general, like San Francisco, everything kind of like hit a peak, and it seems like it's like so. Even with the problems, though, it's better than it was when I was growing up.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't. The history of Oakland is a lot more complex
Yeah,
than what we can handle in this podcast. But but again, it's a beautiful city. I don't think it's any more or less dangerous than any other comparable city. I don't think it has any more or less promise than some emerging, I don't know, suburban city or something like that. It's just kind of just like there are cities that do well for themselves and are able to make progress. I haven't been in Minneapolis, for example, in a very long time. I know that some of the cities in the Midwest and sort of, I don't know, lay their hat on how joyful the places are. So I don't know. I don't live there, so I'm not going to compare or contrast it to others. I know that there is a beautiful energy in Oakland because of its diversity. because of its history, um, because of the art, because of people that are out in movement together, around each other. And honestly, I can't. I couldn't imagine. I mean, most cities that I've lived in have been similar in their diversity, in their challenges, in the joy, and I couldn't imagine living anyplace else or
Yeah.
working or
I mean, I feel,
anywhere else.
yeah, I feel the same way about Baltimore. I'm like, I almost feel like when is the rest of the country going to discover this little gem that's right on the water, half an hour from DC, an hour from Philly, a 2 hour train ride to New York City. Like we're in the perfect spot. We just got to figure this out. But everybody has those challenges. I noticed that you guys threw some attention towards Los Angeles though for a little bit there. Is that a permanent Renegade or is that just a pop up? Like what's going on there?
Yeah, we opened our second store in Los Angeles in October, for all of the same reasons I've been mentioning here about why we started Renegade and why Oakland. Um, I went to school in LA. I have family in LA. Um, LA is just beautifully diverse, um, and an amazing space to run, to ride, to swim, to be active. Um, and where we located our second shop in Silver Lake, which is I feel like a great juxtaposition to like downtown LA, East LA, and the sort of new gentrification of that area. So it's got like a good mix of a lot of different things happening. Um, and yeah, we're really lucky to be there. And a big part of the decision to move there was how much support and love and being connected to the a lot of the run crews in LA. So yeah, that's our second shop. We're excited to be there, and it's beautiful to connect. There's a really amazing sort of tension between Northern California and Southern California. It's existed long before I was born, but I know it growing up. I was actually a Dodger fan living in the Bay Area, so I was
Oh
like
man.
most hated on my little league teams. So it's actually nice to be in both places and have people visit from both areas, um, living and running in both cities. So it's great to be sort of be in both, to be situated in both communities.
So we're gonna see a Renegade cap that has orange and black with an orange bill on one, and then a blue and white.
No, man, that ain't cool enough. Plus, it's already been done. Yeah.
Man, California's a weird space. Yeah, it's interesting though. You have a curated collection at your store, and you really like. Here's what I find interesting about it. Like, I feel like there's a few tastemakers in the space, and I think that you have your finger on that pulse for like what's coming next and kind of like what's interesting in the run space. How do you go about developing your collection there for Renegade?
I definitely am obsessed with design, um, capital D design in the broadest sense. Whether that's architecture, painting, materials, apparel. So that generally just draws my interest at a very high level. I studied it in college. I was fascinated by it as a kid, as a Mexican growing up, and there's murals like around you all the time, and the political nature of murals um, has been something that has. Yeah, I mean, it just sort of grew me up actually from like a knucklehead teenager into a wannabe intellect as I got older.
Yeah.
So art and design have kind of helped sort of grow me up to be the person I am today, to appreciate, messaging and storytelling and the impact that a narrative can have when it's present. The chaos that happens with the lack of a narrative that you can connect to. So anyway, I've been sort of obsessed with design as a little kid, and again, even more so now as an adult. I love artists, designers that have a strong purpose to their work, and so when I think one of the first before well, in the running space, before I think Satisfy and District Vision kind of started to emerge around the same time, and you can feel the design intention in the glasses that District Vision was creating at the time, and of course you can feel the design aesthetic and function and differentiation that Satisfy was creating at the time. And my God, that was exciting. And so I try to find brands and designers like that want to push the boundaries, um, that want to create something that hasn't been created. Um, and I just try to latch onto it. And in some instances, they're and in more so now actually, they're not even running related, and I just want to have them in our space because they're just so thoughtfully designed and made. And so and Wander is probably one of those brands that is not running related, just beautifully made garments that straddle this like design and function and beauty. Um, Maybe it helps that the design team is a man woman team, so it has like this beautiful yin yang to it. Um, and so so yeah, that's that's sort of the premise, I guess, on how I approach it. Um, and at this point we now kind of find each other through social media, through just kind of visiting each other in person. But yeah, that's the level of detail that I obsess with these things, and not everything meets that standard in Renegade, of course. Some stuff you just need a waist belt to put your phone in,
Yeah.
but the things that excite me are those.
Give me three brands that you carry that are unique to Renegade, say, that you feel like runners should be aware of, or maybe you don't even carry them now, but you want runners to be like keeping an eye on.
Mhm. Wow. So I mean, in the shop right now, there's two small brands that I really like what they're doing. One is Tanuki from Japan. The other is Mountain Martial Arts from Japan. They're both young, small brands that I think are having fun with with their running apparel. They're pushing the boundaries on like silhouettes and fabrics. Um, and they're kind of whimsical, which is kind of fun too, So they give you. I don't want to mention other brands' names that act whimsical, and their stuff is kind of crappy. So this stuff is I think has taken that approach to being fun. Like Mountain Martial Arts, for example, they do like a lot of camo print and stuff like that, which of course everybody has done. But they'll do it like a Polar Tech fabric. They have the absolute best um, pocket system along the hips of their shorts, and so that's really exciting to see. There are two new brands that we're going to be carrying. They're out now on social media. You can see them. One is Una, and the other's Portal. Two brand new brands. What I love about Una is, again, the designer comes from a high fashion design, so there's a there's a difference in their silhouettes that is very it's a departure from the traditional singlet with the exact same scoop on the neck and the exact same opening of the arms and things like that. So they're just playing with different shapes. Um, and that's exciting to see because it's all with technical materials and for the purpose of running. And then the other is Portal. And the guys at Portal come from an ultra running, trail, and cycling background. And in fact, the first drop is going to have running and cycling and trail running pieces all in the first drop. Um, and those are brands that I'm excited about in this early part of 2025.
All right. Now, this is going to be a tough one, but where do you see, I mean, where running's come in the last 5 years, especially out of COVID and all of that, where it's come from in the recent history, where do you see it going? Because I don't see it like, I don't feel like we're reaching a bubble. I don't feel like this new growth is, these people are going to go away necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to know from your perspective, where do you see the sport headed?
I think if you asked me this question like once a week for the next like 10 weeks, I probably would have 10 different answers. Um, for sure, one thing is smaller brands are having a larger impact on bigger brands. Um, Even though the larger brands are not as nimble and can't get stuff to market as quickly, it's having an impact. I mean, you see that already with like, On does an amazing job with their apparel. It's changing that. Norda and what Norda has done in the shoe world is when you raise the ceiling like that with, I'm sure that there were design teams talking to their bosses at every major brand when asked, we want you to make a better trail shoe. And their response was, okay, I know all these materials. I can make you a kick-ass shoe, but this is what we'd have to sell it at. And they might have been fired like mid-sentence. You know what I mean? Like that's how the industry has been functioning. And Nick and Willa and Norda changed all of that dramatically. I mean, seeing fall winter 25 shoes, it's like everybody has a trail shoe at 275 and higher now. And that's all because of Nick and Willa and Norda, like no one would have had the audacity to do that. So the smaller brands are having a big impact on the larger brands. And that's exciting to see because now you get the artisan and the audacity and the creativity of a small brand. Um, and then you get sort of like the access to insane materials and technology and hopefully environmental thoughtfulness from the larger brands to make competing shoes in that space. So that's going to just continue to percolate and then just feed off each other. You have way too many smart, creative designers on the apparel side in running that are not going to go anywhere, i.e., like a Brees. They're going to continue to make even cooler, even more amazing stuff. Um, and you have the larger brands now that have recognized they're losing too much market share, and they have to get cooler, hipper, and be more agile. And so I think that's going to have. We're going to see more of that play out. I could see the larger brands having more limited drops, more collaborations like Post Archive Faction and On. So running's just going to keep getting cooler.
I like that. When you said one thing that I think that there's been a price raising in shoes now for the last few years. It started with, you remember when the Vaporfly came out and people were like $250 for a race shoe, that's crazy, and they couldn't make enough of them to supply the demand. Same thing happened with Super Blast when that came out. They're like, people are like, that's ridiculous. This isn't even a race day shoe. It's over $200. Nobody's going to buy it. They can't keep it in stock. I think sometimes it merits it and sometimes it doesn't. When I look at Norda, and you brought up Norda as an example for a more expensive trail shoe, Norda's using Dyneema, Biodyneema, which is good for the environment. They're using the Vibram outsoles. Like, they're trying to create a really quality shoe, and that's why it's priced where it is. But they also can't compete with the production numbers that maybe a Nike can put out or an Adidas can put out or one of the major brands. So you're talking about a smaller inventory. They've got to make their profit on a higher priced goods product. Other times we're now seeing that all the bars are being lifted and all the shoe companies are now charging more. So I think sometimes when you raise the ceiling and you do something creative and you bring in a new product, that's great. But I do also feel like there's some bleeding from the industry where they're still using not as great components, but they're bringing the price up. Would you agree with that?
Um, Actually, I think I'd push back a tiny bit and say that, I mean, when you raise the bar, not everyone's going to sell a buttload of, $300 shoes. And in fact, that's never going to be a major shoe brand's strategy. So then how do you capture? I mean, everybody's been trying to create and capture the market of that, um, like what we call now like this super trainer, so it's like a $50 savings or a $75 savings on what you were just talking about. Um, um, So anyway, what I see now is like the Nova Blast at 140 is a phenomenal shoe. Like it just checks a lot of boxes. It performs, it's lightweight, the price is great. And $140 is still a lot of money. But I think because of what we expect now from 180 and 200 and $275 shoes, you can expect more from this $140 shoe. So
Yeah.
Mount to Coast, a new brand. I think it's rare for a new brand to get as many things right as they have gotten right. And the R1, I think, is an absolutely phenomenal first time out of the gate shoe. A lightweight shoe, 8 ounces, a sensible drop at 8 millimeters, a sensible stack at like 28 in the midfoot. Like it just like it got out of its own way and just made a very simple, nice fitting shoe.
It seems like an easy formula, right?
Yeah. So they kept it simple, and if I was in that room, I would have said, "Hell no, don't charge 160. Like charge a lot more." But they were smart, and shows that they're smarter than a lot of us at keeping it at 160. And because of what you can expect in terms of durability, it's even a better value because you can expect a lot more mileage than your traditional shoe. But Amount to Coast and the materials and performance of a Nova Blast, I think, are aided by these super trainers and these racing shoes that now have people talking about materials, about performance, about longevity, and they have that formula where they're their own equation to then ask themselves, is it worth it? And whenever you have a customer asking those questions, that's great for everybody.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you. I mean, I can name, you've got the Rebel V5, you've got the Nova Blast, you've got the Evo SL coming out from Adidas, you've got the Brooks Hyperion. Those are just four right off the top of my head that are under $150 that benefit from the materials that came down from the super shoes to in there. I mean, the Evo SL has got the Light Strike Pro 2 in the midsole, all these foams, this technology, and this, what I would say, right now, the most important thing that's happened to shoes in the last 10 years is the supercritical foams and the introduction of PIBA into the mix and some of these other TPEE blends and stuff like that that are trickling down to the consumer at what I would say now, what used to be the 120, that price point is now the 150. So there has been some inflation, but that tech is dropped down and you're getting an extremely incredible. When I grab one of my old shoes from 5 years ago and I feel the midsole, I'm like, how did I run on this?
Yeah.
But
yeah. And again, because we have more people in the running space now, we encourage people, if you're running your first 5K, 10K, half marathon, there's no need for a racing shoe. There's no need for a plate. There's no need even for like a TPU. Like, get a shoe that fits well, that you enjoy putting on every single day, and have fun running all different speeds and distances in that shoe, and just become familiar with yourself, your body, what's working, what isn't working. And on your second or third pair of shoes, then you can start to add more tools in your tool belt, as we call it,
start experimenting. All right. So we're talking about entering 2025 now. Is there anything that you're really excited about in the upcoming year?
Well, we're getting a lot of buzz. Renegade is, because of LA. I think because of the work we're doing in and outside of running, because some of our emerging brands. So I'm excited for some of the partnerships that we're going to have for 2025. Some of the new brands, some of the new projects that we have cooking up. So that's exciting. Like, we're becoming more relevant, and that's exciting because that's a celebration of like the team here. I have an amazing leadership team. I mean, I should really pause for a second and say that, like, there are three folks on our leadership team in addition to myself. Hannah, Mia, and Sarah, that are like, it's like this is like the brain power behind what we're doing. I actually just want to stay on this point for a second because what we've talked about so far, and where we're headed and what I'm excited about, is only possible because we've set up a structure where we really try to operate again, like maybe like a design team, maybe like a marketing team, maybe like a charter school founders leadership team. So it's like we have this leadership team that really leans into each other's strengths, creativity. We brainstorm like we're a design team. Um, so so the team at Renegade and the staff are just like amazing folks, and so that's exciting because it's the team that's coalesced, man. When you meet them individually, collectively, when you see their work with major brands, you're like, holy crap, how did you guys cook that up? And I do want to say for a second, because it's not happenstance, it's not last minute, it's not just slapped together. Like, we put a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of regular meetings, research. I mean, like, there's a lot that goes into what we're doing here. Um, and we don't take any of it for granted. So I'm excited about our team and what we have cooking up for 2025. Yeah, I mean, right now, the first thing that I'm excited about, just like in run up to the LA Marathon, which coincidentally aligns with the Oakland Marathon 1 week later. So we have a bunch
Yeah.
of like programming that we're doing. We have this campaign called The Rest for LA, where we're going to support the running community with all of the things that they need to start and be successful at the marathon, besides a training plan. So we want to like support the running community with the rest of everything else. So recovery and meditation, and I think there's like an art activity that's planned, just to like forget running for the night. So it's going to be more of that. So that's what we're excited about. I'm trying to put together like a small capsule of apparel that reflects the ethos of Renegade and that celebrates our running community. So I'm excited about that. I would say those are two things right off the bat. From a product standpoint, um, I'm always excited about what Satisfy is doing. Their trail shoe, I think, is going to
The
really,
rocker.
yeah, I think it's going to really shake some people up. The 005 is also exciting. So to have them kind of like battling it out, in the high fashion polished floor rooms, of our shops to the dirt is going to be exciting to
I've
watch.
destroyed my 005s already. Like I wore them to a concert. And we actually crowd surfed Nick at the concert.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, which I was surprised he was party to, but we had again had another nice night of wine drinking. So yeah,
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me actually.
yeah, he's a good time.
Yeah.
All right, Victor, this has been a lot of fun. I'm always excited to talk to you. I think that you're filling a niche in the running space that is really useful to the community, and it puts a spotlight on what's possible when you follow, like, not necessarily, the traditional business plan, but like going after being excited about style, design with a capital D, that kind of stuff, and serving your community. It creates something that when people are asking, you said, what's the formula for community? And I said, it's authenticity to a certain degree. Your enthusiasm for beautiful product, beautiful people, and bringing it all together, I think is that PowerPoint that people are looking for, but it's not something that everybody can build, because you got to have a little bit of taste and style and a little background for it. But I think you're doing a great job, and excited to see other stores find their personality similar to the way that you have at Renegade, because I think that this is, for me, this is the exciting space in running retail.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. It's like just like a really great, capsulization of what we're doing, and I appreciate that. And thanks for giving some space and time to run specialty. We don't get it. It kind of gets lost in the world of the running industry. So I appreciate that as well. And thanks for making the time for us.
All right, Victor, we'll check in with you then in 2025 and see how that LA went.
Sounds great, man. We hope to see you out in LA soon.
Maybe. All right.
Take care.